Saul doesn't learn from his mistakes, right? Like he's let this vacuum be filled with jealousy and anger and paranoia. And he just keeps doubling down and tripling down and going further. At any point, what he should have done is realize, I need to be following God, right? Like that should be my priority and let God sort out everything else. And yet, it's his inclination to this evilness that resulted in God leaving him in the first place. Meanwhile, David just keeps doing better and better. In fact, Saul's desperate attempts to cling to what he wanted, his jealousy, ultimately is what leads to David getting everything. Right? But that's for a later chapter. Verse 30 closes out chapter 18. Every time the commanders of Washington attacked, the Eagles were more... Wait, no, sorry. I prayed that we wouldn't be distracted, and I'm the worst offender. Let me bring it back. Every time the commanders of the Philistines attacked, David was more successful against them than all the rest of Saul's officers. So David's name became very famous. Right? What do we do with all of this? All right, what do we do with all this? Ladies, do you need to ask your husbands, how many would you have been willing to acquire? Father, maybe we need to be thinking, how many do we tell our sons to? The answer is 0. Like if any number came to mind other than 0, put it on your connection card. We'll have a conversation later. It's a whole different situation, right? There's no culturally relevant number other than 0. We're removed from these events by thousands of years, right? A lot has changed in the world, but what has not changed is human nature, right? Jealousy has not changed in thousands of years. Anger, bitterness, envy, paranoia, none of that has changed in thousands of years. The technology has improved so that we can exercise it on greater scales. But some of the basics of human nature have not changed. And I think the real challenge is that when God created humanity, he designed us to be in relationship with him. We were literally hardwired to have a relationship with God. That is how our existence is meant to be. And when sin entered the picture, it interrupted that relationship. And that wasn't able to be restored fully until Jesus died and rose again on the cross, providing a way for us to put our faith in God and to have God back in our lives, to have that relationship restored. And what we're seeing here is the problem that we see all the time in the world around us today, right? That people who are not connected to God, you see a hunger for something is missing. They might not be able to identify what. They try to fill it with so many things. Some of you have heard me say before, like it's one of my favorite songs, but the U2 song, I still haven't found what I'm looking for. And I genuinely believe like that became the hit that it was and is still relevant decades later because people resonate with that. Like there's something more, right? That we were meant for more. And the warning in the story of Saul is what are we allowing to fill that space? Right? That what we're meant to do is to allow God to fill that space. That as believers, we need to let God's Spirit fill every part of our life. Not just the Sunday morning part and the small group part, right? But the work part, the home part, the friends part, the activity. Like every aspect of our life needs to be impacted by God. The question then becomes, right, is the one that I asked at the beginning of the message. What do our actions reveal about potential deep-seated problems that might be under the surface? Because our actions, our words, reveal what's going on inside. They reveal our priorities, our values, our focus. Jesus tackles this directly in Luke chapter 6, verses 43 through 45. He says, a good tree can't produce bad fruit. A bad tree can't produce good fruit. A tree is identified by its fruit. Figs are never gathered from thorn bushes. Grapes are not picked from bramble bushes. A good person produces good things from the treasury of a good heart. And an evil person produces evil things from the treasury of an evil heart. What you say flows from what is in your heart. And I feel like some of you have probably seen this as well. It seems like every couple weeks somebody goes viral because somebody was filming them in an inopportune moment, right? Where they said something inappropriate, racist, hateful, derogatory, or whatever, or they did something bad, or they ran away from, and sometimes it's somebody well-known, and then we're all watching, and then they have to do the apology parade of like, and there's a part of me that every time I see that, one of the phrases that seems to always come up is like, in that moment, that's not who I am, right? You know, I was tired, I was stressed, I was this, I was that, but that's not who I am. That's not how I am, that's not what I believe, that's not what, and Jesus is saying here in this passage in Luke, he's going, no. What comes out in our weak moments, what comes out in our tired moments, what comes out in those moments where we can't hide it is what's in our heart. All right, it was just a little uncomfortable. Because I've had some of those imperfect moments where I'm really glad there wasn't a camera around. 1 Corinthians 10:31, Paul writes, so whether you eat or drink or whatever you do, do it all for the glory of God. There's this principle in Scripture that anything we do can be for God's glory, even the most mundane tasks. We can do them in a way that honors God, or we can do them in a way that dishonors God. And the story of Saul is a real warning of like, there isn't a both and. We can't be both honoring to God, but also doing some other things in our workplace to get ahead, right? That we can't be honoring God all the time and still be having these things come out of our heart. He's going, man, it's an either or. Either we are producing fruit that honors God, or we are producing evil fruit that dishonors God. There's nothing neutral. One of the fascinating things for me with this passage today is we never see what David is thinking. Right? This particular chapter, the focus is on everyone else, whether they love him, Saul's hate, his hate, all of the different emotions. Saul's life is ruined because of his jealousy. And most of the time you get the impression it's not even really impacting David, except for the times the spear were flying at him. That almost impacted him. Jealousy, these kinds of things, part of what God is, part of the warning that we see in Saul's life is it just ultimately destroys us anyways. Right? So often it makes the very things that we're jealous of or afraid of or paranoid about happening happen. And so I think the challenge for us as we come out of this passage, like what do we do with this story from thousands of years ago about a guy who really kind of walked away from God and let his life be filled more and more with evilness and jealousy, is what fruit are you known for? How would your coworkers describe you? How would your family describe you? Because I'm pretty generous with how I describe myself. Maybe you're not that way, but I'm pretty good. Like, even my imperfections, like, yeah, but if you know the circumstances, you wouldn't have reacted that good. How would other people describe me? Where I work, where I live, where I go to school, on the sports team I'm a part of, the club I'm a part of, the association I'm a part of. And do these actions reveal something deeper that needs to be dealt with? And if so, what needs to change? All right, what needs to change? Saul's core issue was that he wasn't choosing to follow God. Right? He wasn't allowing his life to be filled with God. I think some of the best ways that you can pursue a life where God is filling every part of your life is with other believers, right? That you confess that to God, but then you also turn to a close friend who is also a believer and go, man, I need help with this. I need some accountability with this, to be honest with it, to put it out there in the open, and then pursue it together. Our small groups are an incredible way to do that. Our classes, anywhere where you're getting in a circle with other believers, as opposed to this, right, is an opportunity for that kind of accountability and growth.